Look into a mirror right now, or imagine one. Look at your eyes. If they're blue, pay close attention, because what you're looking at isn't what you think it is. It feels permanent. It feels like it's always been part of being human. Brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. Just genetic variety, right? Just the normal shuffle of DNA. But that's not what happened. Blue eyes didn't exist for almost all of human history. Not one person had them. Not for 200,000 years. Every human who ever lived had brown eyes. Every single one. Then, in the blink of an evolutionary eye, something flipped. And every blue-eyed person alive today, all of them, can trace it back to one single person, one human being, one tiny accident in their DNA. Scientists gave that discovery a name. They call it the HERC2 switch, and the story of how it happened is stranger and closer to you than you'd expect, because this isn't really a story about eye color. It's a story about how fragile normal really is. Stay till the end, because the last part will change how you see your own face in the mirror. So let's start with what your eyes actually are. Your iris isn't a painted surface. It's not colored in like a drawing. It's built out of a pigment called melanin, the same stuff that darkens your skin in the sun, the same stuff sitting in your hair follicles right now. More melanin in the iris means darker eyes. Less melanin means lighter ones. Brown eyes are packed with it. And here's the part most people don't know. Blue eyes have almost none. That's the twist. Blue eyes aren't actually blue. There's no blue pigment in there at all. What you're seeing is an optical trick. Light hits the iris, scatters, and bounces back at exactly the wavelength that reads as blue to your brain. It's the same reason the sky looks blue. Not because the sky is painted blue, because of how light scatters through it. Your friend's blue eyes are doing the exact same thing the atmosphere does above your head. So the question isn't, why are some eyes blue? The real question is, why did some people stop making brown pigment at all? And that's where it gets strange. In 2008, a geneticist named Hans Eiberg at the University of Copenhagen set out to answer that question. He'd already spent over a decade circling it. Back in 1996, he first linked eye color to a gene called OCA2. OCA2 controls how much melanin your body produces. Simple enough. But when Eiberg's team went looking for the actual mutation that causes blue eyes, they searched the OCA2 gene itself, and they found nothing. No difference, no fault, no missing piece. Imagine spending over 10 years hunting for something in exactly the right neighborhood and coming up empty. So what killed the pigment? It wasn't in OCA2 at all. It was next door. In a completely different gene called HERC2. Buried deep inside HERC2 is a tiny stretch of DNA that acts like a control switch for OCA2, not the engine, the dimmer switch beside it. And in blue-eyed people, one single letter in that switch is flipped. One letter out of 3 billion in the human genome. That one flip doesn't destroy the OCA2 gene, it just quietly turns the dial down. Less signal reaches OCA2, less melanin gets made in the iris, and brown fades out into blue. But here's what's fascinating. Eiberg didn't stop at one Danish family. He pulled blue-eyed people from Denmark, then from Turkey, then from Jordan. Countries separated by thousands of miles with almost no shared recent history. If blue eyes had appeared independently again and again in different places, you'd expect different genetic fingerprints behind it. Different mutations, different switches. That's how evolution usually works, messy and repeated. Instead, every single blue-eyed person in his study carried the exact same flipped letter in the exact same spot. Not a similar mutation, the identical one. That's not what independent invention looks like. That's what inheritance looks like. It means every one of those people, oceans apart, speaking different languages, living completely different lives, all got that switch from the same original source. One person, one moment, somewhere in deep history when that single letter in the DNA flipped for the first time. Everyone with naturally blue eyes today is, in a very real sense, distant family, related through a mutation that happened to just one human being. So when did this person live? Eiberg's team estimated it happened somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. Think about how recent that actually is. Humans had already painted caves, already buried their dead with ceremony, already crossed oceans on rafts, and for every single one of those tens of thousands of years, every human eye on Earth was brown. Then, within roughly the last 10,000 years, one tiny switch flipped in one person's DNA, and it spread. Imagine you're that first blue-eyed human, walking through a world where nobody has ever seen eyes like yours. Every face around you is dark-eyed. Yours is different, and nobody could explain why. There was no science, no genetics, just a strange pale ring around a pupil that had simply never existed before. That's not a fantasy. That's a real moment that really happened to a real person somewhere in human history. But that's only half the story, because here's the part that catches most people off guard. This mutation didn't make anyone stronger. It didn't help anyone survive a harsh winter or spot a predator or fight off disease. Eiberg's own research made that clear. Blue eyes carry no survival advantage over brown ones. None. So why would something so useless spread far enough that today hundreds of millions of people carry it. Most people assume rare mutations either help you or they vanish, but that's not quite right. Some mutations just ride along quietly, generation after generation, doing nothing harmful and nothing especially helpful either. And then something else, something completely separate, decides whether they spread. In this case, many researchers point to a very human explanation: sexual selection. A new unusual trait like this in a small ancient population may simply have stood out. Novelty draws attention. Attention shapes who has children with who, and a trait with zero cost can spread through a population for reasons that have nothing to do with survival and everything to do with preference. And it might be the strangest part of all. This same window of time, roughly 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, lines up with a massive shift in how humans lived. Populations across parts of ancient Europe and West Asia were transitioning out of small hunter-gatherer bands and into early farming settlements. Bigger groups, more contact between strangers, more opportunities for a single new trait to spread fast instead of dying out in an isolated pocket of 20 people. A rare mutation in a tiny wandering band might vanish within a generation. That same mutation in a growing connected population has a real shot at sticking around. So this switch wasn't just a lucky roll of the genetic dice, it was a lucky roll at exactly the moment in history when human society itself was reorganizing into something that could actually carry a new trait forward. Now compare that to your life today. You didn't choose your eye color. Nobody chooses theirs. But you're looking at the living result of a single accidental letter change in one ancient person's DNA thousands of years before anyone could write it down, multiplied across every generation between then and you. Every time someone with that gene had a child, and that child had a child, the switch got copied forward, unbroken, all the way to your face, or the face of someone sitting next to you right now. That's not a metaphor. That's the literal mechanism sitting inside your cells. So what killed the mystery? Modern DNA sequencing did. Scientists can now scan that exact spot in the genome, RS129138332, in almost anyone, and predict eye color with remarkable accuracy just from that single site. What once looked like an unexplainable difference between people is now one of the most well-mapped single mutations in human genetics. But mapping it doesn't make it less strange. If anything, it makes it stranger, because it proves in hard data that a trait this visible, this central to how we recognize each other's faces, came down to one flipped letter in one person, spreading quietly through thousands of years of human lives who had absolutely no idea it was happening. Here's the part that's easy to miss. We treat eye color like it's just background information about a person, a detail on a passport, a line in a description. But it's really a fossil, a living fossil, sitting right there in someone's face, connecting them backward through an unbroken chain of ancestors to one specific human being who lived before writing, before farming spread across the world, before most of what we call civilization existed. Brown eyes are the default setting of our entire species. Blue eyes are a single glitch that never got patched out because nothing about it needed fixing. And that's the strange truth sitting behind something you've probably never thought twice about. The color of someone's eyes isn't really about color at all. It's a record. It's proof that a tiny, meaningless accident in one person thousands of years ago is still visibly rewriting faces today, all because it happened to spread instead of disappear. You didn't inherit a color. You inherited a chain of unbroken luck, running all the way back to one single human being. And every time you look someone in the eye, brown or blue, you're looking at the same kind of accident that built almost everything else about you too. We just don't usually think to ask why.